Oh, thank you. All right, Tommy, what inspired you so much to create this great documentary movie, Doc of Chucky?
Well, I always have loved horror movies, and as a kid, I was paging through all the horror magazines like Fangoria and Gore Zone, and looking through famous monsters at the behind the scenes of how these things were made. And when I got the opportunity as I got older and I was working in film to explore the making of these movies, I worked on the look back at Friday the 13th, at Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, Return of the Living Dead. And part of it was thinking about what franchises are left to really explore that haven't had this multi-hour, incredibly big, dozens of people treatment. And Child's Play and Chucky, the franchise, had been going for so long. It finally felt like the right time to really explore not just the origin of the movies and the making of them, but how Don Mancini took this thing from so long ago and has carried it for decades in such a fantastic way. It just felt like the right time. And I think it was. I'm really happy that we were able to do it.
Can you describe the process of gathering interviews from such a diverse group of cast and crew members?
It's always a battle in a way to
Yeah.
get all of these people together. It takes a really long time. I mean, the process is really just calling people through, their representation, their agents, their managers, asking friends who might know someone, and things like that. And, we make a really, really, really big list and we think, okay, how long is our show? How many people can we really fit? So we try to just make sure we get in as many people as we can, because we don't ever want to think that someone who didn't have a big role, let's say, doesn't have a fantastic story or doesn't have some really wonderful information. So we were really lucky to get as many people in this show as we did across the entire franchise. But it's part of the difficulty, but also part of the excitement. Every time someone signs on, it's a great feeling. You want to ring the bell. It's like when you sell a house, you want to ring the bell. You want to ring the
Yeah.
bell when someone says yes.
What were some of the most surprising insights you gained while making this documentary?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to one of them just as a filmmaker and just thinking about these kinds of things weren't around when I was growing up and wanting to be a movie maker. Just how Don Mancini had such a great vision and idea, and how he got it to David Kirshner, and how the two of them were able to work together and finally end up building this thing that has gone on for decades. I loved that story, and I loved talking to David and to Don about the genesis and the longevity of it all. I mean, we ended up revealing some, I think, super interesting, fascinating, and socially relevant things about part three with some of the characters that I still want them to be a surprise for people who haven't seen the show yet. I think every movie had at least one thing that really surprised me as someone who had done the research. And it's one thing when you do the research in these shows, you read about something, oh, I never knew that, or oh, I want to follow up on that. But when you get someone to tell that story and then they bridge onto that something that you absolutely never knew, that's when it becomes even more exciting and more real and more important to tell the story. So I'm excited for people to watch this and say, oh, I knew that, and that's great to see him say that. But I'm excited about the little moments, the grace notes peppered throughout that people go, I never knew that. And now I'm going to go back and watch the movie through an entirely different lens. It's exciting.
Thanks. How does Doc of Chucky differentiate itself from your previous documentaries like Never Sleep Again and Crystal Lake Memories?
Well, I would say that it's different in the sense that I tried this time to find a way to make sure that each little segment on movie one, movie two was its own story, but still sort of had a tease into the next one. And I think it was easier because, unlike the other movies, Don Mancini was involved the entire time. David Kirshner was involved the entire time. So we had that. We were lucky to have a through line of people heavily involved, obviously Don becoming greater and greater in directing, I think that's the difference is the through line of the core creative team is there as sort of a guiding force throughout the entire thing. And I think it helps the story, it helps it move it along in segments, and it helps keep you hooked for each one.
Can you share any memorable moments from your interviews with actors like Jennifer Tilly or Brad Dourif?
Okay. I mean, everyone was delightful, but getting to speak with Jennifer Tilly and Brad Dourif was incredible. They're icons, they're incredible. They've done so many things in our movie watching lives that we're all attached to. I would say that one of the things with Jennifer that I loved was her ability to answer a question and actually answer 10 questions at once. It made my job much easier. She has so much love and passion for what she's doing in these movies that it comes through in her interview in a way that I never would have expected. I loved the energy she gave, and all of her answers were just so fun and so insightful. And Brad was wonderful to talk to because you can see why the character of Chucky has survived through the decades as an icon. It comes back to not just what Don Mancini created on the page, which is clearly important, but it's then the next step of what Brad did. And when you talk to him, you can see that he's always thinking of something. He's always giving you something more than you're expecting because he's that smart and he's that connected in terms of the character and the questions you're asking. They're icons, and I just consider myself lucky that I got to talk to them for as long as I did because they were also incredibly gracious. They gave very, very long interviews.
How did you approach the challenge of covering over 3 decades of the Child's Play franchise?
I think that's one of the tough things about these shows
Yeah.
is to try to fit in as much as you can in a certain runtime. I mean, this show is 5 hours long, but it could have been 10. We have so much information. So it's really the battle of what they say, killing your darlings. Like, I love all of this, but I only have room for this. So now I have to go through. And I think that's the hardest part is how can we make sure we're telling the best story and the most fun story in the time we have? And it really is, it's picking the moments. And luckily, with this cast and crew of people, we had so much to choose from, and everything was delightful and wonderful. So the challenge is not getting the information so much as making sure you can pick out the best in the time you have.
How did you select the archival footage and behind the scene material included in this documentary?
That is usually dictated by what the people are talking about.
Yeah.
There's always things we definitely want to cover. There are certain scenes, we always want to cover. We want to cover in the first film when the doll comes to life in Karen Barkley's hands. Of course, you have to cover that scene. So we know that we're going to want to show that. But then there are times where someone will bring up something incredibly interesting and you want to illustrate that with a clip from the movie. So it really comes down to what is someone talking about? And do we have behind the scenes photos? Do we have something that our graphic design team created? Or if not, do we have film footage? So it really comes down to picking that best moment to showcase and bring to life the story so it all comes together as one big exciting moment.
What aspect of the Chucky's character do you believe resonates most with the audience even after all these years?
It has to be his incredible personality, this dark, evil glee, this wonderful wit. Even as he's killing someone, he has a wisecrack that isn't just funny, but ties into what he's doing. I think that Don created an icon because of the personality and the backstory and where the character is going. It's so memorable because so many horror villains don't have kind of what's going on up in here that Chucky does. So it's personality. I mean, it's just so memorable.
Can you talk a little about the significance of the humor in the Child's Play franchise?
Yeah, I think that is one of the reasons that this franchise has such longevity and why fans really keep coming back to the film franchise and they keep revisiting them and they want more and then they get the series and they love that. it's this wonderful amalgamation of horror and humor. It's such a fine line. And I think Don did it really, really well from the beginning and found ways to walk that kind of tightrope over the years and keep things smart, keep things scary, and keep them as funny. That horror and humor, they go together so well because they're two sides of the same coin. There's such powerful reactions. One moment you could be screaming, and then one moment you're laughing. And I think the Child's Play franchise, more than so many others, does that well because of the character of Chucky and how he interacts with the people around him.
What do you think makes Chucky stand out among other horror icons?
Definitely, again, the personality.
Yeah.
He's so memorable, and also the idea that so much terror can be packed into such a tiny, what should be seemingly harmful, playful package. It was the unexpected. It's kind of that idea of you take something and you turn it on its head. And I think the Child's Play franchise, and Chucky in particular, does that over and over and over again in a new way every time. I think the longevity of this franchise is it didn't go back to the same well each time. Every movie was saying something different. It was building on the last one and setting up the stage for the next one. And I think that this franchise finds a way to, again, walk that fine line of story and emotion and horror and humor. But overall, it's always fun. And you never forget how much fun you're having. And that's really important. When you're at the movies and you're watching something, you want to have fun. And the Chucky franchise is fun.
What do you hope viewers take away from Doc of Chucky?
What do I want them to take away?
Yeah, yeah,
I want people to watch Doc of Chucky and have a great time, of
yeah.
course. I want them to watch the documentary and relive the moments that they loved, hearing the stories of how they were made. But I think more important to me is that aspect that when someone is watching the documentary, I want them to decide to go revisit one of the movies that they hadn't seen in a long time, or revisit one of the movies that maybe they wrote off because it wasn't their favorite, because now they can watch it with an entirely different lens, view it with a new set of eyes, a fresh perspective. I think if people come away doing that, then I think that I'll have done my job. In addition to just entertaining with the documentary, making people think about this franchise and why it works and why it's important in horror.
How did the partnership with Shudder shape development and distribution of Doc of Chucky?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry, how did the partnership with Shudder shape development and distribution of Doc of Chucky? Your partnership with Shudder.
When I was first putting this together,
Yeah,
the only place I thought of was Shudder. I
perfect.
just thought that it would be a perfect home for this.
Yeah,
They had already run two of the other shows I'd done, Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, and Crystal Lake Memories.
yeah.
And I just thought that it would be a nice home and a nice companion piece for those. But just honestly, Shudder gets it. They get not just what horror is, they understand what horror can be, why horror is important, and they understand the fans and what the fans want and why they love what they love. It was just honestly a perfect fit, and I crossed my fingers, that they would want to partner up on this, and I'm so lucky that they did because it was one of the most incredible experiences working with them. They really understood what I was trying to do. They were so incredibly supportive, and I think the show is exactly what I wanted it to be because Shudder believed in it from the beginning. And that is so critical when you're on a project. You want to make sure that people truly believe in what you're doing, and Shudder was behind it the whole time. It was wonderful.
And my last question, what do you think the future holds for the Child's Play franchise?
Oh my goodness, I wish I knew. Only Don Mancini knows.
Yeah,
Um, I still think the great thing about what Don had created is there are so many places to go with this film franchise that I think would be unexpected, because I don't know that anyone thought that it would ever work to one day put Chucky in a mental hospital. And it worked. It's a beautiful film. It's a terrifying film. It's a wonderful film. It says something. So I don't know what the future is, but I absolutely cross my fingers that soon there is another Chucky movie, because there are places to go. And if anyone is going to make it work and take audiences on that fantastic ride, it's Don Mancini. So I'm pretty sure he must have something happening in the back of his mind for what's next.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.